I remember I used to be like I remember being younger and sitting on the phone with my girl, and we would be having like these conversations for like hours on the phone. We would be having these conversations back and forth, just like philosophical conversations on the phone back and forth for like hours. Like we would just be talking for hours, and really kind of like steel sharpening steel type of vibe. And I remember having a conversation with her one time, and she was like, "P, you had a personality trait of somebody like you never fulfilled." She said you could have everything and still not be satisfied. And she's like, to an extent, that's why your life turned out the way it turned out. Because you had everything that you needed. And instead of really building upon that and enjoying that, you took that for granted, and the fact that you wasn't satisfied by it. So you allowed that lack of satisfaction become an emotional thing, and you lost track of focus. And it's like, after she told me that, like I sat back and I thought about that. I spent like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks thinking about that. And then like I came to this space where I came to this conclusion. And I realized that at one particular point, like I started agreeing with her, and to a certain level, I agree with her. And this part of it is I took certain things for granted. I agree with that. I took certain relationships for granted. I agree with that. I took certain people's loyalty for granted. I agree with that. But in a different space, there were a lot of things I didn't agree with. As I really sat back and I pondered on it, like, and after that point, I really took the time to really find myself. Like, once I was like away from my circle and away from the people that I was used to being around, our relationship really kind of changed. And I really kind of learned, like, people felt like I was suffocating them because my personal ambition was different from their personal ambition. Like, I wanted something different than what they wanted. And I wouldn't even say that I wanted something different than they wanted. There were certain individuals that were around me that wanted the same things that I wanted, but weren't as ambitious and willing to work as hard to achieve what I wanted and what they wanted. And there were certain individuals who just didn't really want anything to begin with. They didn't want anything in life. You got certain individuals, once they reach a certain level or they reach a certain plateau, that's the plateau that they're going to be comfortable at for the rest of their life. They're going to be satisfied living that same kind of way the rest of their life. That's the majority of the population. And when I sat back after me and her had that conversation, and I debated with myself, and I said, yo, am I selfish? Am I like selfish in the way that I look at life and the things that I want out of life? But then I came to a conclusion, and and then we had another conversation, and we was talking about money, and she was like, all you care about is this, and you care about is that, and you care about is this. And I realized that, and I sat back and I thought about that for a while. And it wasn't even about that. Over time and going through everything that I had went through in life, that I'm going through in life, I reached the point where it was just how I'm built and learning in myself and discovering myself. And I think everybody should do that. And it's another precaution I've learned to take in life. You don't grow unless you go through things. Everything I've gone through, I can't regret it, because when I look at the person that I am, regardless of what's going on outside of that, I'm so happy with that person, because I would have never reached that level. I would have never been that person. I would have never had that self-awareness. I would have never had that confidence. I would have never had that train of thoughts, or those type of train of thoughts, if I didn't go through that. Because I look at the person that I was before that. And what's crazy is, I look at the person that I was before that, and I look at how weak-minded that person was, how simplistic that person was, how basic that person was. And I look at the people that I had around me that were attracted and that gravitated towards that person. And then when everything went left and it went downhill, like every situation, when things are on the up and up, people are dapping you, and it's love, and it's this and it's that. And then when things go awry, people are pointing fingers at you, telling you all your wrongs, and how you cheated on them, and how you broke their heart, and how you was selfish, and how you only cared about yourself, and how you was always rude to them, and how you was disrespectful, and how they never liked you, and how they felt like this about you, and how they felt like that about you, and how they felt like this about your personality. But when you were that person and you were living that kind of lifestyle, nobody was saying that. But when you're in a position where now they can be critical and they can say all these things, all of these things and all these emotions and all these thought processes start coming out of people's like mouths, and people start dealing with you and handling you a certain kind of way. So I sat back and I thought about that. Like, I started sitting back and I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, okay. But now I look at this person that I am, and I'm 20 times better than that person that I was. And even with all that, woofing and all the negative comments that are being said about that person that I was, I still find myself like, well, you was around that person. And I know the typical answer somebody's going to give me, well, I was around that, but I knew that you could be better than that, or you could be the person that you are now. And that's the typical answer people are going to give you. And yeah, okay, that could work or it can't work, but that's a matter of opinion. But on a bigger scale, on a bigger spectrum, it left me wondering, and it left me kind of like sitting there debating with myself and having this conversation with myself, and it made me say, yo, I gotta find myself for real. And in me having to find myself after going through all those situations and going through all those different circumstances and dealing with all these different cultures and all these different personalities and all these different kind of places that I bounced around and had to be in, I learned that I connected to that old person in one way. And I'm gonna say two ways. I was always selective about the people that I wanted around me. I was always careful about the people that I wanted around me. I was never really social. But that always came from a self-awareness within myself. Like, I could look in the mirror and see my flaws and see my mistakes and see my shortcomings. But in seeing that, I always wanted to be better than that. I was always hungry for more. Because the competitive aspect of myself is, I don't care about this person having a yacht. I don't care about this person having a mansion. I don't care about this person riding around in a Benz. What I care about is the freedom. That's what's most important to me. And what I always felt like was the people who didn't have that freedom were forced to live in this box. and they were forced to live by these rules that in reality they don't want to live by. But in order to survive in the environment that they're in, they had to kind of accept those evolutionary rules in order to survive in that environment. In order to survive in that kind of environment, they had to live by these false rules and these false stipulations. So when she said to me, like, you're only driven by these type of things and you're never satisfied in these type of things, what I didn't really understand is it wasn't, what I don't think she understood was it wasn't the material aspects. It's the freedom. I feel like even right now, I feel claustrophobic. Like when I'm around like a whole bunch of people, like I'm uncomfortable. Like I feel so uncomfortable. Like, and I've been like that since I was a small kid. I've been like that since I was a small kid, evolving and growing up into a man. And even at middle school through high school, like people are fan of like my first skill was musically. Like I could freestyle, and that was the first thing that would gravitate, that would draw people to me. But me being like that kind of shy person, that kind of reserved person, I still didn't like that spotlight. So a lot of times when people would come up to me and be like, "Oh, I heard you could rap, this, that, and the third," I kind of brush it off like, no, while I downplay it because I didn't really want that attention. Even though that attention could have materialized and manifested into gaining me all the materialistic things that I wanted. But I understood subconsciously it was a level of attention that would come with that A, I wasn't built to handle and deal with, and B, I didn't really want. I just wanted the freedom to not have to live into this like box, or not have to live by like certain people rules and behave a certain kind of way. Like, and what that made me do, it made me discover myself. You look at, like, I'm gonna give you an example, and I'm gonna use Donald Trump for an example, and I'm gonna use two type of presidents, and I'm gonna break it down in like a lot of different levels. You look at somebody like a Donald Trump, right? And the way Donald Trump ran for president, I think Donald Trump was the first politician that ran a campaign where he won the campaign, or he won the election, not really based upon politics or being able to structure political jargon and go back and forth in debates on global economic politics and healthcare and war and peace and all of those parts and all of those subjects were pieces in his campaign. What made people vote for him is because he did not care. And it was the first time people seen a candidate or somebody run for office that really didn't care whether or not he won a position. There was like, people felt like there was no like ulterior motive behind him running for president. It was no ulterior motive behind it. Even though to an extent to me there was, but for majority of the masses, they felt like, well, he doesn't need the money. He don't need the clout. He don't need the connections. He doesn't need the power. He doesn't really need anything out of this position. So So at this point, we could basically say, we could look at him and say, regardless of all the shortcomings and all the things that we know about him to be wrong, society might view as wrong, we could look past that and still vote for him, because we could look at him and say his character is clear as a glass house. He gonna be who he is. He's gonna say what he wants to say. He's gonna behave how he wants to behave. Even the situation after when he said he grabbed the lady's vagina, the situation with the porn star, that's the first time that you could see a guy running for president of the most powerful country on the face of the earth in the most uptight political campaign on the face of the earth, where any little false step or any little false move, people are going to try to create backlash to attack you and destroy your character. That was the first time where countless attempts didn't do anything, because you were dealing with a billionaire who didn't need the position. So, and even though now he's in office, he's still doing the same thing. He doesn't care. He's still gonna say what he wants to say. He's still gonna go on Twitter and tweet all these type of crazy messages out. He's still gonna do what he want to do, and people gonna have to respect it whether or not they like it or they don't like it. But I think it's the first time somebody has done that and approached politics in that way. And that's why I think he won. And to give you a quick breakdown of how this kind of like goes hand in hand. We look at and I'm gonna use Barack Obama, right? Barack Obama was the epitome of class and sophistication. People look at Obama and say, God, Obama was so classy and he was so sophisticated, and he was just the complete opposite. And to an extent, I agree. He was that. Facts. But I put Obama in that same category I was saying in regards to myself. And I'm not comparing me to that Obama now, but I'm saying in the sense of his campaign is, I'm a black male, right? Any false step that people could have found in Obama's campaign, like I'm gonna give you an example. If Obama was that guy that they caught sleeping with a porn star, he would have never been president. If Obama had got caught saying something about grabbing somebody's pussy, he would have never been president. Because he had to run a certain kind of way. He had to run inside a certain kind of box, because any false steps outside of that box would have been detrimental to him. So he had to be the clean cut, because society already looks at a black male and says, well, blacks behave like this, and they're usually ignorant, and they're usually listen to rap, and they usually act like this, and they usually behave like this. So they have a black guy from Harvard who's a lawyer, who's also married to a black woman who's a prestigious lawyer, who went to a prestigious college. He had to check off all these boxes. He had to follow all these rules of pure perfection in order to even be considered a candidate to run for that position. Well, Donald Trump could walk in there and have a history of sleeping with porn stars and inappropriate behavior with certain women and behaving a certain kind of way, and people will look past that because he has a level of success where he doesn't need this position. If that was Obama, it would have been complete destruction. That would have never happened. But in that same token, I'm going to use immigration as an example. Do I believe Trump is a racist? No. Because I don't believe in racism. In the sense of how people typically look at racism as a black or white thing. I don't believe in racism in that sense. And this is how kind of like psychology works in a sense. Perception is more important than reality. So when you look at Donald Trump, people are on Donald Trump's back because immigration, right? Let's use immigration for an example. People are on Donald Trump's back because Donald Trump has kind of like said, okay, we're being strict on immigration. We're going to build this wall and we're going to send this minority back and we're going to send this minority back. But quietly, without anybody paying attention to it and without him saying it directly, and this is a statistical fact, if I'm not mistaken, and people could look it up on their own, under Barack Obama's term, there has not been a president that has deported more immigrants than Barack Obama. But on the flip side, they look at Trump because Trump directly came out and said it and ran a campaign based upon that. But if you look at Obama in Obama's 2 terms, there has never been a president that has deported more people out of the country than Barack Obama. But under the guise of Barack Obama being black, being a minority, people ain't gonna pay as much attention to it because they are instinctively programmed to look at the white guy and say, well, this white man has always hated minorities, so he's always going to try to be against the minority and push the minority out and destroy the minority. So people look past that. So on a psychological standpoint, to return back to the like the beginning, like the conversation I used to have with my girl, when we would sit down and we would have these conversations, and I progressed over time, I grew into this person that I am right now. And this person that I am right now, when I look at this guy, right, and I look at him in a position of power, not to say I support all his policies and I support all his rules and all the ideologies that stand with him or, multiple certain individuals in positions of power. But I started looking at their approach into reaching that position of power in a different way. And I started looking at what they did in that position in a different way. Because externally, she looked at me and said, okay, he's driven by material, or he's driven by this type of looking female, or he's driven by these type of scenarios. And in reality, that wasn't the case. The fundamental core of who I am is this antisocial person that just wants to be left alone, to live in peace and do the things that I want to do and to live the way that I want to live. And when I look at somebody like that, I look at somebody manifesting that and doing that in real world time. And that's the part of myself that I said I grew. And I don't understand, like, this whole concept of like social behavior and what people deem is acceptable in social behavior. I think as I've matured and I've transitioned into the adult world, I think it's been the hardest adjustment for me because when you're young, you pick and choose the people that you have around you, not for the sake of I'm gonna hang around this person because I need a job. Let me go sit down and have a conversation with this person because I need a job. Or let me go sit down and have a conversation with this person because I'm looking for some sort of advancement in life. I'm hanging around this person because I genuinely like this person's personality, or I genuinely like this person's vibe. Transitioning into adulthood, You then transition into this world of you have to network, or you have to kind of live in these certain, like I said, you have to be this type of person in order to survive in it. Like you have to like deal with these falsehoods in order to exist in the world as is. And I think in transitioning into adulthood, that's the hard part for me. And I think it's certain people around me that have been able to make that transition better than me. And there's a level of normalcy that I just can't accept. And even as I dive and I've gotten older and I've matured, that's the part of me like I've sat back and I've waged war with for an extensive period of time. And it's like, am I wrong? Because and I often question myself about this, like, am I wrong because inside of myself, how I am, I'm completely happy with it. But to the outside world, they create all this rhetoric and create all this speech and, maneuver and say and do all these things that they want to do and say. But in reality, the things that they find, like the majority of the mass might find interesting, I really don't care about. And I really don't want to be a part of. Like, I really don't want to participate in it. Because I've reached a point in my life where it's like, it's a level of selfishness to an extent. But I want what I want, and I'm not willing to settle for anything less. And people say, well, it's a step-by-step process. And you got to start small and work your way up. And I get that. And I agree with that. But there's a part of myself that I'm not willing to sacrifice in order to do so. And there's a part of me that just, and I understood everything that I had to go through in order for me to mature and become this person and accept and be happy with this person that I am. But before that, I understood how, like, even back then I used to think like, okay, certain things made sense and I was moving in like the right direction, in the right path, but it was still so much room for growth. And even at this point, I understand there's still so much room for growth. But one thing that has not changed within my character is there's a level of acceptance and normalcy that I can't fit in that box. Like, I don't want to be one of those guys who wake up and go do the same thing 5 days out the week and be dependent on me having to like act a certain kind of way to a superior because my life depends on that superior. Like, I like, there's a part of me that's never been comfortable with that. And no matter how I try to like wrap my mind around that, I can't. And as you get older, the more pressure society puts on you to conform to that, because the majority of the people around you are conforming to that. And even though they miserable in conforming to that, they ain't got no choice. So they get mad at you because you looking at them like, that's what you call, like, I look at certain people and it's like, they look at you and say, you not living life, you not doing this, you don't go here, you ain't going out, you not doing this, you not doing that. And it's like, I live in a world of 8 billion people, and the majority of everybody I see does the same repetitive thing 365 days of the year. And it never changes. Besides a certain group of society. And it's like, for me, that's already, at this point in my life, that's already so old to me. And that construct and that way of living is already like, I can't like even fathom like being stuck like that. And people like are so programmed, like, to me, in my opinion, and like I said, it's just my personal opinion. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that everybody has to agree with me. Each person has their own individual outlook on what life is and what should be required for life. If you're a person that says, you know what, all I want is I want a job, and I want a girl, or I want a husband, and I want to have the 2 kids, and I want to buy a house and raise my kids and have grandkids, then die, and that's what you happy doing, I salute you. And that was a part of myself that I had to improve on, because I was around people that potentially that's who they were. But me being who I was in my approach, that's not who I was. That's not what I was after. So I was extremely hard on them, or I would be extremely blunt in the way that I interacted with them, because I could never understand, like, that way of living. Like, I can't understand that. And it's like, I think, to the same token, the same way people didn't understand, like, the way that I behave, and they might have felt like I was aggressive, I was hard, I was direct with my words. But if you felt like I was like that with you, imagine how I was with myself. Imagine the amount of pressure that I put on myself, and I still put on myself. Imagine that. You feel like, oh man, he's so blunt and he's so harsh and he's so direct. Imagine the amount of pressure that I put on myself, especially at the position I am now in life. And I still apply that type of pressure on myself. And the fact that I'm in these type of, like, places and dealing with these type of circumstances and stuck in these little boxes and dealing with, like, narrow-minded situations and less evolved situations, the amount of pressure that I put on myself now is 20 times more than that, because it's a level of self-awareness that's 20 times more than that. Because I know that a majority of people that I run across don't think like me. And not that thinking like me is necessarily right, but even if you don't think like me, at least bring something to the table that I feel like I'm going to learn from or grow from or become better from. But to sit down at this age in my life, or sit down at this point in my life and be having conversations or communicating with certain individuals that don't bring anything to the table, and it's not necessarily financially, it's development. I think when people look at when people look at individuals, sometimes they look at people and say, yo, how I look at life is I look at a bunch of people who are scared, who are never going to do nothing or never going to be nothing. A majority of people in life ain't happy. We living at a point right now where depression is at an all-time high. Anxiety is at an all-time high. Misery is at an all-time high. The financial gap between the middle class and the upper class is at an all-time high. Poverty is skyrocketing. And the majority of that is out of fear and out of distraction. Because instead of people really facing those situations and facing those fears and dealing with that lack of enjoyment and dealing with that misery, people try to hide behind certain situations. Me, myself, I've done the same thing. Whether it be drugs, whether it be alcohol, people accept their position in life because they ain't really got no choice. And right now I'm walking a tightrope. Like, I'm on a tightrope. And it's only by the grace of God, the support system of the family and the mother and the father that I have, I'm able to still maintain and stay afloat. But at the same time, people look at you from the outside and say, well, he's taking advantage of that. I'm so on my toes, it's scary. I'm so focused, it's scary. That's why petty and pointless conversations and petty and pointless friendships and petty and pointless people who are in positions where it's like you in a position where you can open the door and put me in the same position that you in. And that's in a position where you barely holding on for life. And that's as far as you could take me. You could open the door and put me in a position where I could do the same thing you doing, holding on to a miserable 9 to 5 for dear life. That's as far as you could take me. I don't run across anybody who think outside the box. I don't run across anybody who programmed like me or programmed on a level that's better than me that I could sit down and have a conversation with and so gain from and really push myself and help push that person and have that person push me to step outside of this box and get outside of this rat race that I don't want to be in. And doubling back into the situation with genes, it was saying like creatures are programmed like this. For example, even when we was talking about in the previous conversation I had with how that fish evolved in a way in order to be able to hunt. Even if when I sit back and I look at individuals right now, it says society is this machine, right? And it reaches a point where it's stuck between 2 points: necessary transition and fear. And it lives in between those 2 points. For example, like it was saying like let's say there's an animal, right? Let's say it's 2 animals. And I think it used the hawk and the dove. But the way that it used the hawk and the dove, I'm going to use it in a different way. I'm going to use it in this sense. A hawk and a dove get into a fight, right? The hawk reaches a point where it realizes it can't beat the dove. So now the dove ends up being victimized by the hawks. So now, even though it might only be 10 hawks and 50 doves, the fact that these 10 hawks are so strong and so dominant, the doves become fearful. Even though it's 50 of them, and they could gang up on the doves. Even though it's 50 of them, they can gang up on the hawks. But out of fear of confrontation and dealing and having to really go face the hawks, they live in a space of complacency. Or they reach a point of realization and say, man, you know what? I'm tired of these hawks taking advantage of me. So what we're going to do is we're going to like scheme and unify and take out these hawks one at a time. So we may not be able to beat the hawks one-on-one, but it's 50 of us and it's 10 of us. We could break down in increments, in groups, and attack each hawk individually in numbers. But society ain't programmed to think like that. And the people that are around you ain't programmed to think like that. People are so focused on holding on to the little bit of crumbs that they making and choking at the good life that anything that could potentially rock that boat, they're not gonna step outside and make no moves. Even if you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, what does it say? The rich dad is rich because he's not fearful of taking risks. The poor dad is poor because he's complacent. He reaches a level where he says, okay, this is enough. I'm fearful of going past this because if I lose this, I'm not going to have nothing. And on a bigger scale, that's the world that we live in. And that's the world that I'm fearful of being stuck in. And inside of myself, it was like a level of confusion with like, am I doing this right? Because when I stepped back into the world, I came back with that mentality 20 times more. Because I realized, damn, when I was removed from it and I was looking at it, I'm like, okay, I'm looking at all these niggas I was around. Excuse my language, but I'm looking at all these individuals that I was around. And I'm like, okay, even I've been removed from society from all this time. And I'm looking at what they accomplished in that time with what society, how society had manifested, like, and how society progressed. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, I've been through all this. And the reason I'm in this position that I'm in is because I went through all this. But I'm looking at an individual who hasn't been through a tenth of what I've been through, that has accomplished nothing out of life, who wants nothing out of life but to choke and hold on these little crumbs that they make, because they stuck between complacency and fear. Even though it's more of them than it is of them. It's 8 billion people in the world. Right? It's 8 billion people in the world. Maybe less, maybe more. Right? It's billionaires in the world, right? People say they want to improve conditions. If people really wanted to improve conditions, if everybody in the world said, we're going to take an initiative. If every month everybody said, okay, I'm going to give $1. No matter the country, no matter the city, no matter the place. And I'm gonna get that dollar, and we're gonna come to a consensus vote and say we're gonna start at this particular country, and we're gonna invest in fixing the area in this particular spot. We're gonna take $8 billion and fix this spot. And it might not even it's not even gonna take that whole 8 billion. You can say you're gonna take 8 billion and we're gonna try to affect this particular spot. You could do that once a month for the next 5 or 6 years and create change. But society is looking at the 1%. Society is trained, I should say, to look at the 1% and move off 2 principles: jealousy, because A, they don't have that, and B, docileness and complacency, because A, that 1% is in a position that it knows that it's in power, and that majority beneath it depends on it. That's why the whole concept of, you look like at trickle down economics, the whole concept of trickle down economics was still a psychological mind game where it was predicated on, well, if this select group of individuals controls the majority of the finances, they're going to have to spend money anyway, so it's going to trickle down to the rest of the people who have less. And they pushed that agenda until it became a reality. So you got a majority of individuals who look at the world, sit back and depend on this economic structure, this economic breakdown, and live by it and die by it. You got somebody telling you, or you not living life, who never been outside of their city, in a world with over 100 different countries, hundreds and hundreds of different cultures, hundreds and hundreds of different ancient sites and different artifacts and different things to absorb. And you got somebody telling you that you're not living life because you're not going into this one area in a city, or you're not participating in the same activity that the only activities that this person has ever participated in their life. And you looking at somebody like that telling you you dead, or you not living life, or you not doing anything, and this person has never stepped outside of their city. It's the world that we living in. Now, sit back so much, and I try to like rationalize with myself, and I try to like, cause I just don't get it. Like I don't like I try to like wrap my mind around trying to understand like the level of complacency, the lack of hunger that and the level of stupidity that I see on a daily basis. And people look at the people that are above them and they like, well, the rich people are doing this and the people in a position of power are not doing what they supposed to do. They doing the right thing. Because the majority of the people that they know for a fact, before they got, example, before them people got up there, they was down here with your stupid ass. They was down here with the majority. So now they've escaped and managed to reach a level where they got away from that. It's common sense. I'm going to put my foot on your neck and I'm going to apply as much pressure as possible. Bill Gates could have stopped at $1 billion. Warren Buffett could have stopped at $1 billion. You think he gonna stop making money? You think with everything people say about social media nowadays, oh, social media is bad, people are using it wrong, women are degrading themselves on social media, this, that, and the third. You think Mark Zuckerberg is gonna shut Facebook down because y'all saying all that? When he know at the end of the day, even though y'all saying all that, y'all stupid behinds is still gonna log in, still gonna check everybody posting, look at everybody pictures that's making you feel bad and depressed. You still gonna repeat that cycle and get that surge of dopamine every time somebody hit like on your picture, every time somebody comment on your picture. You think he gonna stop getting that free money from an idiot? Come on, man. That's just reality. And I had this and having conversations with her and going back into that space, and I had to, like I said, I took a lot of time to really sit down and analyze myself and look at myself and ask myself the way that people react or the way that people look at the way that I'm moving. Is it wrong or is it a certain kind of way? And the more and the more, me personally, I'm 100% in agreement with myself. I 100% believe in myself and the way that I approach life and my hunger and my ambition and the things I want out of this. You seen what happened to Kobe Bryant? 41 years. He had 41 years on this planet. And for them 41 years on this planet, he went full throttle after everything he was after. So when he died, he could die. The saddest part about it is he lost his daughter in the process, and she didn't get a chance to go after everything she wanted in her lifetime. But I'm sad to see him go. But at the same time, I can look at him and say, yo, his dream since he was a kid was to make it to the pros. Not only did he make it to the pros, he's third all time in scoring, now fourth behind LeBron, 5 championships, MVPs, scoring titles, all-star games. So since from a child, his goal and his ambition, he could say he died. Even after Kobe transitioned from playing basketball, and you would see him in an interview and people would ask him, how does he feel about basketball? Will he ever return? This, that, and the third. He said he had no motivations to ever play basketball again because he knew he went full throttle, raw, uncut, ruthless ambition to get to his goal. He looked up to Michael Jordan. He passed Michael Jordan in scoring. He looked up to Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan had 6 championships. He got 5. He looked up to Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan had MVPs. He got championship MVPs. He got regular season MVPs. He played in all-star games. So at the end of his career, when he retired, he's satisfied. So even in death, I'd rather die like Kobe at 41 than live 100 years working some miserable job, living my life like a coward trapped in a box, having to live by somebody's rules and people guidelines and principles of how I need to act and interact with them. And interacting with them does absolutely nothing for me. I'd rather have died like Kobe at 41 than live 100 years like one of these regular niggas doing nothing with my life. Because I know at the end of the day, I went hard and I reached what I got what I wanted out of this. Like I saw a quote today where they was talking about when Custom Model was training Mike Tyson. And he said, when people are searching for what's the meaning of life, there is no meaning to life. The meaning of life is kind of an individualistic principle. And once you find that individualistic principle, the meaning of life becomes the task. The meaning of life becomes execution of that principle. So to me, when I look at somebody like that, the reason his death is even 20 times more impactful is because for 41 years, you saw ruthless, cold-blooded ambition by any means necessary. Kobe is the only player to rip his Achilles tendon and walk back on the court and still go shoot the free throws, man. Kobe ruptured his Achilles heel and came back on the court to shoot the free throws, man. His last game, after having Achilles tear, being old and not being the same guy, dropped 60 points, man. And through his whole career, people were saying he's selfish. He don't like to pass the ball. He plays for himself. But when he stopped playing, what did everybody go back and look at? All the things we said he was selfish for. The 81-point game, the 60-point games, the 50-point games, the championships, the highlights, the rings. The same thing we criticized him for. He's selfish. He's only worried about himself. And now he's dead. Those same things we were saying he's selfish about is the same thing people are going back and look at and say, God, boy, they took him too early. God didn't take him too early. God understood that's a different type of animal. He's too great to be walking this earth with you simps. He's too great to be walking this planet with you simps. That's a different type of animal right there. That's a different type of being. That's a different type of person. Like I told you, I'd rather die at 41 knowing I accomplished everything that I want to accomplish in life as far as my ambition and live 100 years trapped in somebody else's dream or trapped in somebody else's belief or building somebody else's system or building somebody else's dreams. And if I can't execute the things I want to execute the way I want to execute them, I put my hand on whatever Bible you believe in or whatever truth that you believe in and tell your God he could kill me right now. Raw in that cut. So when I rewind and I go back to that conversation I had with her, and I was a little bit younger too at that point, and having that conversation with her, it brought about a lot of confusion inside myself. And then when that confusion, it came like a point where I had lost myself so much, and not just her, but in trying to fit this outside perception or this outside view of what reality is. I found myself like trying to fit in that box, and it created more harm inside of me than ever. And I had to like recalculate myself and say, nah, that's not what I want. And I don't care who don't like me because that's not what I want. I don't care who doesn't accept me or doesn't feel like or whatever you feel like. I don't care. Because throughout history, the people that we criticize the most, and throughout life, the people that we criticize the most are the people who've done what they wanted to do and didn't care about us criticizing them. And the people who are the most disrespectful are the people that we can't do anything to anyway. So we just allow them to be disrespectful. I.e. a Donald Trump, who got a billion dollars and could say the most disrespectful things in the world and still remain in a position of power, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. They could sit around and run around in circles and talk about impeachments and do all this. They could talk about the prince of this country and know that he was hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein and photographs with young women and doing all this type of legal stuff, and they still can't do nothing about it. But the only thing that they can do is in the little world, in the little box that they trapped in, they can mess with the same people that's in the little world, in the little box that they trapped in. They can harass them. But the people who really having an impact in the world and really doing things that keep them trapped in that box, they'll never do nothing to them. They'll never say nothing about them. Like I remember when Malcolm X was going through it with the Black Panthers, and outside of what Elijah Muhammad or his beef with Elijah Muhammad, the biggest thing Malcolm X said to me that stuck out to me, Malcolm X said, yo, I got to a point where first Malcolm X had said something about, I think it was after John F. Kennedy had got shot. Malcolm X said, when they asked him a question about John F. Kennedy getting shot, I think he said something about the chickens came home to roost or something like that. So after Malcolm X said that, Elijah Muhammad banned Malcolm X from talking. So Malcolm X couldn't come out and have any conversations with the public, and they punished Malcolm X and they pushed him to the side. But there were two things on the low. There was a level of jealousy Elijah Muhammad had developed for Malcolm because of Malcolm started getting more attention. So that presented the opportunity for Elijah to shut Malcolm up. But Malcolm X said something that was powerful to me. He said this. He said, I came to a point where I realized that we saying all this stuff about these white people and about the way that they treat us. But anytime it's time to really move in an aggressive manner, like when these crackers are spraying us with water hose and sending dogs at us to attack us, we never on the front line for real. But let somebody who's in the brotherhood, or let somebody who's a black Muslim does something that violates or they feel violates the principles of being a black Muslim, and watch how quick they attack their own. But the white man that's doing everything that he's doing to us every day, when it's time to go to war with them, we never really go to war with them. We just talk. And then when you look at it and you go further on down the line, who killed Malcolm X? Was it the same white man that Elijah Muhammad programmed him to hate? Or was it somebody from his own circle who was preaching this pro-black or this pro-black stuff? It was the same person who looked just like him. So he spent a whole lifetime preaching about white devils and white this and pro-black this. And who killed him? Who walked into, dog? These people showed up to this man's house where his wife, his kids was at, and threw and tried to gas bomb a fire, a Molotov cocktail inside of this man's house. It wasn't no white man that did that. It was your friends. Those was your friends. Those was your brothers. Those was your black brothers. It wasn't no white man who did that. So, like I said, through time and having a conversation, you reach a point and you grow and you mature. And society sits back and it tells you and it makes you feel conflicted with yourself for your progression. And there's a level of myself too that sits back and asks myself, when I read all those books and I try to build myself intellectually to gain a wider perspective, is it for the greater good or is it for my intellectual selfishness? Am I learning this to like for the sake of debate or is it something I really want to apply and practice in my day-to-day life? And I ain't gonna lie, majority of my life, I consumed a lot of knowledge, but I never knew what to do with it. And even as I was consuming it, I wasn't really digesting it. And the true like consumption of knowledge, when you truly consume knowledge, that knowledge turns into wisdom. And even though I was absorbing I was absorbing and taking in a lot of knowledge, it wasn't manifesting in the wisdom because in my day-to-day activity, I always felt like I was still moving wrong. I still wasn't applying myself the right way. I would still go back to do the same things I had continuously been doing. And then you reach a point where it's like, okay, I get it now. This makes sense to me. And I'm militant minded in my approach and what I want out of life. I'm militant minded about what I want out of life and I won't settle for nothing. If I don't like this, I don't like this. And I don't care who don't like me for not liking this. You did? I'm militant minded about what I want out of life. I don't care. You can be happy with where you at and how you living in your condition. That's your choice. But I don't have to live under that same principle, nor am I going to. I mean, I think when I had a conversation with Shorty back in the day, and me and her having that conversation, she didn't understand me. And I don't blame her because in that particular time, I didn't understand myself. But it took time for me to grow into that position and understanding. And right now, I think the biggest thing for me and the biggest thing that I had to deal with is like the social aspect of fitting in, especially when you bouncing around in different places and you start questioning yourself because you're not fitting in and you start feeling more and more uncomfortable because you feel like, okay, is something wrong with me? Is it something wrong that I'm doing? And then you realize when you really look around and you start adding it up and you put everything on the scale, like, what am I fitting into? Like, what am I trying to fit into? Like, what am I missing? What am I missing out on? A bunch of shit that I don't want to do anyway. A bunch of shit that I don't want to be around anyway. A bunch of things that I don't care about anyway. Really what I want is my freedom to get away from all this shit anyway. So at the end of the day, it's all about application. And I've consumed a lot and I've been a lot. But in standing still, the biggest thing I told myself is continue to push myself, continue to believe in myself, and continue to believe in the approach. And I say that to anybody. When I look around, I see fear. When I look around, I see complacency. When I look around, I see a whole bunch of people that's stuck. They chained the same. And for me, I'm scared of that. That's what I'm fearful of. I did that. I worked a 9 to 5 here, and I sat back one day, and the head guy came in. This guy had a private jet. We out here working every day, hard, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, going out here working at nighttime, working in the morning, then coming out working at nighttime for 12, 13 hours. And then you got this white guy, and I'm not using race or anything, like, not, you know what I mean, not on some racial type thing, but then you got this guy who comes in, he owns the company. So we working 1,000 hours, and the most our check gonna be is $800. Meanwhile, this guy comes in once a month just to see how much work we done did. His check $5 million for showing up twice in 8 months. His cut is $5 million. Your cut is $800 every week. And there's certain people, they satisfied with that. And that's not even normal. That's after working 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 hours. You coming out with that $800. And you got certain people, they accept that. They happy with that. They got their little, I'm going to smoke weed money. I'm going to drink alcohol money. I'm going to trick on these girls money. I'm going to buy my kids some shoes money. I'm going to pay my rent money. And they going to be in that repetitive loop forever. And me, I'm so scared of that, bro. Like, I'm scared of that. I'm fearful. And I'm sitting and I'm watching this dude. The 2 times this dude, I seen this guy. I'm sitting and I'm looking at this guy. I got this shovel in my hand. I'm digging this hole. And I'm looking at this guy. And I'm looking at this guy. This guy got the same blood pumping through his veins I got pumping through my veins. His heart pumped the same way my pump. He gonna die the same way I'm gonna die. He was born the same way I was born. But I'm just a piece in his dream and his foundation. I'm just a little micro. I'm a little ant in the empire that he built. I'm a little screw in the cog. I'm a little cog in his machine. And I'm supposed to be satisfied with that. I'm supposed to accept that. That's what I've been trained and programmed to accept. And I'm supposed to live like that for 60 years. And meanwhile, I'm in this field struggling under this sun, digging holes and going through this nonsense. This man leave. He only been out here 30 minutes. After that, he don't even stay on the site. Jump back in his jet, fly where he want to fly, and go hang out with his family and chill. Me, I'm going to spend the next 60 doing this right here just to survive. Stay afloat. I'm supposed to be satisfied with that. And I'm supposed to adjust my mind, and I'm supposed to switch my mind in the way my brain been programmed to accept that. As you know how the saying go, do as the Romans. When you in Rome, do as the Romans. So since everybody around me, this is how they used to live, and I'm supposed to feel comfortable, and I'm supposed to run outside and go chase that lifestyle and be satisfied with that. That's reality for me right now. Come on, man. End of the day, I just look at it different. I mean, I look at it different. Everybody got their own opinion, and me saying what I'm saying, I'm not saying that to judge anybody or what anybody do. That's what you do. That's cool. I'm happy for you. I'm happy to see anybody happy. If you find joy in what you do and how you living, more power to you. But at the same time, don't impose your way of lifestyle or how you live on me. Or don't tell me you won't attack me or try to approach me in a certain kind of way because I don't like what you like. Or I'm not satisfied with what satisfies you. You could be comfortable living in this same city for the rest of your life. Me, I'm looking at it like it's a whole planet out there to go explore, and I only got this amount of time to do it. I don't want to sit here for the rest of my life. And you can look at that and say that in a racist thing, I'm being, people look at you for that, thinking like that or looking at life like that, like it's a racial thing or you're not respecting people's cultures and you're not doing this, you're not doing that. It got nothing to do with that. I'm allowed, God gave me this. Oh, I'm